Welcome everybody to the SALA Professional Graduate Programs Open House. Just to start by introducing ourselves, my name is Tijana Vujosevic, and I'm the chair of the architecture program.
And hello, my name is Roehr. I'm the chair of the landscape architecture program.
We will be also joined by Robert Ferguson, who is the head of ARCUS and Master of Architecture and Landscape Architecture student. And
we also have LASA, Hannah and Alistair, who are the presidents of LASA, which is the Landscape Architecture Student Association, which are also joining us to present and ask. You can ask them questions.
And last but not the least, we have Janus and Tara, who are student services managers, who can answer all technical and curricular questions that even Daniel and I do not know answers to. So just to explain how this session will go. First, the two of us, Daniel and I, will give a general presentation about the program, its goals, and its structure. You will hear presentations from the students about their experiences at SALA and student life. And in the end, we will have kind of a Q&A session. You can ask questions in the chat all throughout the presentation, and they will be answered either by Tara and Janus and Emma, our publicists, or by the presenters as is appropriate.
Sorry, just to clarify, if you could ask your questions in the Q&A function, that would be best, because then we can answer them live and see which ones have been answered.
Okay, thanks, Janus. So I would like to start this session with a land acknowledgement. As those of you from Canada know, and those of you from overseas are not particularly, might not be particularly familiar with, Canada is not a fresh new country. It is actually a land which was populated by First Nations people for a time immemorial, for millennia before European settlers came here. And our obligation as settlers on this land is to acknowledge that the place where we gather and where we study and when we teach is the traditional ancestral territory of the people who were colonized by the Europeans in the 19th century, a process which lasts to this day. And the School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture at UBC is located on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And we, as a school, commit ourselves to working on recognizing and learning about the truth of their experience of colonization and working towards reconciling somehow towards the reconciliation between the settlers and those who have the ancient right to land. To start this presentation, I would like to say that School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture at the University of British Columbia is grounded in a particular place where we are. We are on the Canadian West Coast, on the Pacific Rim. We are a city that belongs to the urban network of North America. And we are located, of course, on the traditional unceded land of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. Saying that we are of this place means on the one hand that we're grounded in the landscapes and cultures that are indigenous to this place, that we are dedicated to always learning about local practices, local materials, local landscapes, but at the same time, we're kind of in a vibrant port. So what is part of the culture of this place is also belonging to networks of commerce, information exchange, migrations of people. So when we say that we're of this place, we are part of these huge international networks as a vibrant cosmopolitan international city on the one hand, and we have huge respect for the place which we occupy. When talking about what SALA is and why you should come here, I would like to just draw on our foundational document, which is our strategic plan, which was recently created. And we identified that there are three things that we want to do as a school. The first is that we want to design for impact. We want to create positive change in the world around us. The second is design fluency. We want to become designers who are resilient and ready to take on challenges in a changing social and physical landscape. And the third is that we always, throughout these processes, want to engage with people and communities around us. I will briefly talk about design for impact before I pass it over to Daniel. And designing for impact means that we see climate change and problems of social equity and justice as burning problems in the world that we as architects do not necessarily know how to solve or can solve alone, but that we have to constantly think about and contribute to pursuing a solution collectively. Equity and justice and climate change are issues that we do care about, and regardless of the changes in the political climate, government priorities, we are committed to them as a school and as a profession. Primarily because what makes this school unique is that we actually believe in progress. You're going to not find a lot of irony here. Everybody at SALA thinks that we actually have the power to make the world a better place, and as a community, we work towards it. We're always looking for opportunities to really advocate for equity and justice, not only in Canada, but on a global stage. We share the belief as a community that it is not only the privileged who need architecture and who need beautiful buildings, but that architecture is something that is a necessity or something that can contribute to the well-being of diverse communities, and that can share the problems with these could contribute to sharing and solving the problems of these communities in society at large. So what I'm showing here, this slide, is actually the image of the Canadian Pavilion at the Venice Biennale of Architecture, which was spearheaded by the group Architects Against Housing Alienation, and which was headed by UBC SALA. So we represented Canada at the Venice Biennale of Architecture in 2023. And it is not only that the SALA project, which was dedicated to the housing crisis and alienation, meaning our estrangement from housing that comes from financialization, high costs, inaccessibility, this is something that we try to present. And students from SALA actually spend the summer in Venice trying to promote these ideas that equitable and just housing comes from recognizing indigenous claims to land, recognizing underrepresented communities, finding new housing models that are not market models for solving our common problem, like the housing situation in Canada is, for example, untenable. So Daniel, I talked a lot. Would you like to take over?
Okay, thank you very much, Tijana, for your wonderful introduction, and I will continue. I've been with this school for a long time, and one of our biggest issues in recent years has been climate change. And the school has many projects also led by colleagues, professor colleagues of ours who investigate, for example, new building technologies. As you can see here, they've developed this building on campus and won also an award with it. In which they practice what they preach. So, for example, they use new kinds of mortar. So in this case, they use handcrete to insulate and build the building and explore and also run the data how this building is more beneficial than the traditional building methods. So there's a big I would say a big impact or influence for really finding methods to combat or mitigate climate change. Also in landscape architecture, which is the program I'm currently chairing, the professional MLA program, where we really also look into ways and methods how to deal in the landscape with the impacts of climate change. For example, flooding is one of the big issues, landslides or sea level rise, or also just the same issues. Housing also impacts landscape, urban farming as a whole, and the relationship of food production to a park system, the combination and so on, or heat island effect in cities, which is increasing. So all those subject matters are taught holistically in SALA by the architects colleagues as well as the landscape architecture colleagues. So we teach actually together. Next slide, if it works. So the one really important part is we are designers. We teach theory, we teach history, but overarching, all of us as architects, landscape architects, urban designers, environmental designers, we are designers. So the design fluency is a really important part. And we are striving to push that limit, not just with the newest digital tools, also including AI, but also with hand drawing, which is the traditional method I still like to teach as a communication and international language tool. So design fluency in all aspects, from hand drawing to modern digital tools, is a really important part. And I think the design fluency has to be balanced with theoretical knowledge and also with historical knowledge of architecture. So we also teach current history, past history, but also theoretical subject matters in relation. So design fluency is not just the visual fluency, but it's also the intellectual fluency behind it. I think that is really important. And very important is also we engage to make it also more tangible, the professionals in Vancouver, the architecture professionals and the landscape architecture professionals in the city are very engaged with SALA, and there's a big interaction of our student body to work there as interns or to research with them or after also, so that the design fluency is also practiced in practice in the summer months, for example. Just go to the next slide. And then I think what is also important is the understanding of there's different programs we have. We teach, obviously, we have two professional programs, which is the MArch, the architecture program leading to a degree which is approved for licensure. You then work for a few years in an architecture firm to be a licensed architect. And we have the MLA program, which is the same route. You study 3 years with us, and then you do 2-3 years in an architecture, landscape architecture intern, and then you are a licensed landscape architect. And it is important to understand this relationship. But while you are at SALA, you are learning to develop your ideas. So there is a fine balance of theoretical, practical knowledge, and also to then help you with that information you're learning at SALA to also be licensed architects and landscape architects. I think that's a really important part. And what has come up in recent years is systematic system thinking, holistic thinking. So not in silos. That's why we are architects and why we're sitting here together on the screen with my architecture colleagues. Architecture and landscape work together. You can't see them separately. And over recent years, the profession has recognized it has to be taught in such a way that you can't separate them. They have to be holistically interconnected. And that's also a really important part we find extremely important. We teach at SALA is the holistic thinking. For example, if you have the runoff of water off the roof of a building and engages, the water runs in the rain after a rain event off the roof into the garden, what happens with this water? So an understanding of the roofscape with the groundscape and to manage and drain this water needs the engagement of an architect and a landscape architect to work together holistically to manage this water, not separately. And I think that's a really important aspect we also teach. And then also collaborative teaching, we all teach together. So we are not in silos. We are professors who teach in both programs, in architecture and landscape program. We interact in studios, we interact in courses, and I think that's a really important part of our education, to immediately not silo the students, but to put them together, to work and learn together, respect each other's profession and acknowledge each other's profession. And you can only do that if you also teach together, so the professors do that, but also do projects together. And so we have projects, so-called option studios, where this is practiced in certain courses, where the different professions are taught together by architects and landscape architecture professors. I think that's also really important. And that happens in the classroom, and that happens also on trips. So we take the students abroad, etc. as well. So this is practiced in multiple ways. Really important also, what we find at UBC very important is the engagement with the communities. And this means particularly in recent years with the First Nations communities to connect, to understand, to reconciliate, to understand land, the impact on land, the history of land, the impact of people moving here, the settler movement, etc. And this respectful with each other is a really important part. And you can only do this by engaging with the different communities and learning and listening to those. And this is a really important part, which we do at UBC and also at the SALA and also at the different unit levels, and learning from each other how these communities build. And very important is also to work with external partners and get advice from these different communities. So we seek advice when we teach also from the local communities, from the city staff, from the local bands, etc. So there is a give and take. And so we are all learning together, not just the professor teaching the student, but we teach each other. And this is a building community is a very important part of SALA. Maybe you want to talk a little bit.
Yeah, well, the project that you saw on the last slide was a studio by Mari Fujita, where they made misting stations in at the Japanese Canadian festival in what is on Powell Street, what is also called Japantown in Vancouver, where the students were trying to bridge Eastern and Western traditions while bringing something useful to the community during the summer. then these are projects from our design build enterprises. Annalisa Mayboom, one of our professors, leading an installation on campus, which was made from prefabricated robot-made wooden parts. And another project, which was led by Joe Damon, which was about using locally sourced recycled cedar to make a pavilion on campus. And this is all parts of this enterprise, which is called the Living Lab. A campus is a living lab, which we are very much engaged with, and where we are not limited to our school for executing projects, but coupling with this enterprise, we just exhibit them all around town. And you have been talking about engaging local communities. This is an image of Kitsilano installation workshop, which was headed by Jane Wolfe, the recipient of the UBC Big Design Prize, the Margulies Design for Living Prize, who invented residents and those interested in the future of Kitsilano, and it's primarily its changing shoreline. Kitsilano is a suburb of Vancouver, which is located on the ocean, to contribute thoughts and ideas and proposals. So the next thing, I think what we want to talk about is the nature of these programs that we have in the nitty-gritty detail. So we have different graduate degrees. We have Master of Architecture, Master of Advanced Studies in Architecture, Landscape Architecture, Master of Advanced Studies in Landscape Architecture, the dual degree program. For the interests of this presentation, this is a presentation on professional programs. We have three professional programs: MArch, Master of Architecture, Master of Landscape Architecture, and the highly competitive dual degree program, highly competitive and demanding Master of Architecture and Landscape Architecture.
Just to interrupt briefly, the MACLAs, we call this the MACLA degree. It's actually a professional MArch and a professional MLA degree. Is the only one in Canada where you can study in 4.5 years, I would say, both professional degrees. In the United States, there are some degrees, but this is the only one in Canada. And it's very competitive because you have to apply to both programs separately.
And be admitted to both.
And be obviously admitted to both, yeah.
So I will talk about the typical course trajectory in the Master of Architecture program. This is, you can be admitted with advanced placement, of course, when you skip the first year. This is a very privileged position, and it's not easily, the advanced placement is not easily granted. So most people would start with year one. And as you can see from this schedule of all the courses that you would have to take, you would take the fall, spring, and summer semesters. So you basically have 3 semesters of work in year one. And in this year, as in all other years, you have to take several types of courses. Courses in architectural technology, structures, and environmental systems. Courses in design media, that means methods of fabric of 2D and 3D representation, architectural history courses, and of course, the most important type of courses, architectural studios. We also allow for a very limited number of electives. This is so intense in terms of what you have to master to become an architect. So it's not an elective-rich program. In addition to these like 4 core kinds of classes. We also have, of course, contemporary practice and communicating construction classes, which we're going to prepare you for the specialized requirements of working in a firm before you start your internship after the school. And in this first year, the architectural studios this first year, you don't have too much choice about choosing your architectural studio, but in year 2, you are taking Architectural Design Studio 3, where you have a choice, where you have a choice of different programs and different instructors, and you can determine your own path, and you have this crown of the studio sequence, Architectural Design Studio 4, which we call Comprehensive Studio, in which you synthesize everything that you've learned in the school, from media and technology to design strategies, through architectural precedents, etc. And in the summer, you're required to take 3 electives. Year 3 is the most flexible of all years. It is dedicated to mostly independent work. So you have like the final choice studio, Architectural Design Studio 5, which is an advanced studio in which you choose from a variety of theoretically and conceptually very audacious studio, and you start with doing what our program ends with, the graduate project. The graduate project is a completely student-driven piece of work where in this term 1, you do research on a topic that you're passionate about or you want to pursue after graduation. And in the second semester, you create design based on your research. And this is completely student-driven. You have just one-to-one meetings with your supervisor and your committee, and it's like your statement about what you've learned in the school and what you want to pursue. Oh yes, we decided this year to show timetables in our school. This is the timetable for all 3 years, from which you just at a glance can see how packed your time is here. So if you're year 1, you would sit from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. In classes first in digital media, then themes and topics, that's the history survey. Then you would have a very brief lunch break of an hour, and you would go into sorry, that was Monday. Then you would have the entire afternoon to prepare for tomorrow's all afternoon of 5 or 6 hours of studio corrects. On Tuesday, you would wake up and go to your building technology and architectural history class. You would have 1 hour lunch break, and then you would like sit in studio for 5 to 6 hours. So you see that this is so intense, and if you're not prepared to have a program that requires so much contact time and so much time in studio, you will be ill-suited for this program.
The similar setup is in the Master of Landscape Architecture, and I will just briefly go through the first year. In first year, it's called, the difference between architecture, it's called landscape architecture. So obviously it has to deal with the landscape. On top of architecture, it deals with science, ecology, environmental, climatology, lots of different things, soil science, botany, and so on. So you learn things. Obviously, first you need to communicate, to learn how to communicate. So you have design media, which is the language architects and landscape architects work with, is to draw things, to visualize things. The second thing you learn is to identify plants, and you have your first studio, and you also have a history course, survey course, so you know the basics of history in garden and landscape architecture. And in term 2, you have, again, design media. You have a very rigorous studio that I would say I taught it for many years. Is the core studio of the first year, where you learn to design a little garden space, and then you design a medium-sized park, just to get into the scheme of what landscape architects traditionally do. In the upper years, you can do different things. You also have landscape technology 1, which is grading and drainage, so how to grade the land, and landscape planning and management basics as well. And then in year 2, you have now what we call regional studio. You do a large scale design. So landscape architects, in comparison to architects who work obviously at the building and city scale, we work at the garden, to the region, to the province, to the country, and to the global scale. We work at completely different scales. And to teach that, we have this regional studio. We teach things like landscape technology 2, which is construction, detailing, how to detail stairs, pergolas, walls, anything like that, the basics on that. And then you have another site analysis course. And you have, again, in term 2, another big studio, comprehensive it's called, in which you learn design at a very refined scale, including a CD set, a construction set, how to detail a park design, for example, for construction. And you have landscape theory. And then in year 3, it's similar to architecture. You have an option studio. Actually, these option studios are SALA-wide. So there are some choices in architecture and landscape architecture, and you can choose. There's a lottery, and you can choose. So if you're interested to do an architecture studio once or vice versa, you can do so. And you have graduate project part 1. I call it a design brief, where you have to do a written part. And then in the second semester, you have the graduate project part 2, where you design what you have written about, researched about, alone, an individual project, and you have professional practice, which is necessary, where you learn with a lawyer in architecture and landscape architecture professionals, also with a lawyer on construction, how to actually, what a contract is, how to actually run a firm, etc. So it gives you the basics for that. And that is mostly taught for both professions together. And the same thing, it's very busy. And I think I can only confirm, I've been here a long time, what Tijana says. Architecture and landscape architecture school is like medicine and law. These are professional programs, or engineering. These are very intense programs and are very suited for people who are very excited and passionate about the field. It is a lot of work, and that's why we added these 2 slides, so you see how many different classes you have. In our case here, you start on Monday morning in the first year with design media, for example, and then in the afternoon is nothing, and you will need the afternoon to prepare for your studio. And then the next day you have plant ID, so you have plants and shrubs. Then you have maybe history, followed by history, a little lunch break, and then you have 4 hours studio. And really important, in first year, you have 3 days studio on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, while in second and third year, you only have studio Tuesday and Friday, which gives you more breather time. And the reason is, in first year, you have a lot of lectures which are integrated also in studio, that you learn about details, different topics of the professors teaching you in these studios. And then on Wednesday, you have design media. Again, you have that will maybe also history. That depends. And then in the afternoon, you have nothing. And then on which you need to work in studio. On Thursday, you have in the morning the history course. And then in the afternoon, you have studio again. And then on Friday, you have in the morning, sometimes it's free, but in this year, when I look at this one, it's actually you have trees and shrubs, and then in the afternoon, you have studio again. That shows you the week is full. And it is important, and this goes in the second term, the same thing, same procedure as in the first term. Particularly first year is very intense because you have to learn so much, because it's a first professional landscape architecture degree, which means there's a lot of information you need to learn about, and that's why particularly the first year is very intense. So I think that is this is the last two slides. And now I think before we do the Q&A, Robert Ferguson, our ARCUS president, will give you a little presentation as well.
Hi, everyone. Oh. 1 second, we just got a feedback loop here.
One second.
Is that better?
Sorry about that.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Good. I see a thumbs up. Great. Okay. Well, like Tijana and Daniel mentioned, the program here, both landscape architecture and the Master of Architecture, as well as the dual degree, is a lot of work. It's very intensive, and we learn a lot, but also it's a lot of fun. It's not work all the time. And personally, I actually did my undergrad here as well. And part of the biggest reason I came back to SALA for my master's was really the beautiful and kind of really strong student culture that we have, which makes school here really great in terms of learning, but also in terms of kind of the social life and all of this. So I'll speak to that. So everything happens really in our studio spaces. This is an image of the Roehr studio, where the Master of Architecture studios mostly happen. It's a really vibrant, busy space full of models, people working on their projects. It's a really, really fun place to be, day and night. But it's not just a place for work. You know, it's really, really, people make fantastic lifelong friendships in this program. You can see we kind of co-opt different lecture spaces for games and other things, just to take a break from work and blow off some steam. ARCUS, I'm the president of ARCUS, and this is the Architecture Union of Students. We kind of help organize additional student events and initiatives, health and wellness programs, social events. And so I'll kind of speak to those as well. We're an elected body, I should say. So kind of one of the core pieces of the student culture here at SALA is Good Times, which happens every Friday. This is kind of a social event where it's kind of themed every week, and students can let loose and relax, hang out, chat. It's a really great time. It happens in kind of a storied area of the studio space called Roehr. It has a lot of history, It's kind of a student-run social space going back decades. Actually, just this year, we're in kind of starting to renovate the space with our own designs and kind of student-built projects, furniture and whatnot. While Raise Bar functions as kind of a nighttime social space on Fridays, it also functions as a kind of breakfast bar on Wednesdays, where we host Waffle Wednesdays, kind of tasty and nutritious, quote unquote, meals for students that we provide. It's a lot of fun. Another time to hang out. Arcus also organizes kind of student-led professional and academic events, whether it's coordinating and kind of reaching out to the professional and licensing bodies in architecture, like the AIBC in BC, or the RAIC, which is the kind of national advocate for architects in the country. We organize those events, as well as more local ones too. And as well, various lunch lectures with professionals in the city, former students, academics. So those are really great to check out as well. We host a couple of really big events every year that are a lot of fun, a great time, and kind of something that all students look forward to. This is Halloween, a kind of recurring Halloween event there's a really, really exciting time, as well as Sala Gala, which happens in the second semester, kind of a more formal event, again, always themed. Here we rent, really great venues in the city to host these events. We also, it is a tough program, and sometimes the workload is a lot, and a lot to take on. And so we run a lot of health and wellness events to make sure that students are supported, whether it's pet therapy sessions. We have one coming up this month, or just even today, this image on the right is from a crochet session, kind of learning how to crochet, that was hosted in the Raise Bar space. Yoga, etc., kind of all kinds of ways to de-stress, relax, and hang out. Such as, we have a soccer team. It's in its second year, architecture and landscape architecture students both. All school levels welcome. This is a great way to meet people and kind of move your body and get out of the studio. We made our own shirts last year. We also, student initiatives are a huge part of the culture here at SALA, as I've been saying. All the things you've seen are student-led and student-run. These are two new initiatives this year that are looking to kind of project student voices and student and dialogue beyond the bounds of the school to the broader community in the city and the country. On the left here, you're seeing kind of a new video series we're calling Hot Times. And actually that's Tijana there being interviewed. This is based, I'm sure many of you know, I'm forgetting the name now, but the kind of Hot Wings based interview format that's very famous. I'm sure many of you know that. And so this is a concept where we're kind of having students interview professors and alumni to learn about their work, but also kind of who they are and kind of break down some of those traditional formal barriers. On the right there, you're seeing the kind of title card for a new student-led publication that's now accepting submissions. So there's basically tons of ways that the student life here is kind of vibrant and exciting and great to be a part of. And these are just a few. Outside of the studio and outside of the country, this is not something that Arcus does. This is a kind of SALA course offering, but there's lots of really exciting opportunities in the summer to do study abroads. Tijana and Daniel spoke to the Venice Biennale that was attended and some of the design build programs, but other programs exist too. Like, for example, this one on the screen. The last 2 years, students have gone in a large group to Japan with professors Bill Peckett and Lawrence Vass to kind of experience the amazing urbanism and architecture that exists in Japan. So that's the end of the presentation. And I would just say that kind of in summary, the student culture here is really something special and unique from what I've heard among schools, not just in Canada, but in the States and globally as well. We're really kind of a student-led school in a sense, and kind of you can make this program what you want it to be. So I hope that's exciting for everyone. I'll stop sharing now and pass it over to Alistair and Hannah to speak from kind of the landscape architecture perspective.
Thanks, Robert. Let me just share my screen here. Right. So yeah, I mean, Robert gave a pretty good overview of the like student life at UBC and at SALA here. But just to add a few things, kind of more from the landscape architecture side. Same as Robert is president of ARCUS, the Architecture Student Union. Landscape has LASA, the Landscape Architecture Student Association. We aim for very similar things as ARCUS. We host events, we advocate for the landscape students, just aim to create kind of that culture and community in the program. I'm sure you'll see a few of us around if you're here next year, but just to speak a little bit more to UBC more broadly, it's a beautiful, beautiful campus. The Landscape Architecture Annex is homey. It's super cozy. Yeah, it feels like home. But then the wider campus as well is just really beautiful with spectacular buildings, some really, really nice like landscapes, and for the plant nerds out there, we've got some pretty spectacular plants and cherry blossoms, and like every time of year on campus is just so beautiful.
And do you mind just going back one slide, Alistair, to just highlight a couple of things? So one amazing thing about UBC campus is we have some amazing planting across the main campus, but we have some great amenities that are on the peripheries of the campus. So on the left, we have a traditional Japanese garden, which is a stunning place to visit. It has Wi-Fi, so you can go there and you can study. And then on the top right, we have a botanical garden on campus, which is where landscape architecture and Markle students do their plant walks. They learn about different plant species. So an amazing resource. It's something that most universities don't have. So we really try to take advantage of it when we can. And we also have a UBC farm, which is a great space. I know that we're starting to make connections with that as a resource for potentially getting involved in more of like the food side of landscapes. So that's a really cool space to visit as well. Yeah, just wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah.
Oops. But all right. Events, a lot of our events we do in conjunction with ARCUS. So Salaween, Sala Gala, those are all done in conjunction. But some of the other events that we host are like summer beach hangouts. We have Friday lunch tea times with, you know, pastries, cookies, coffee, and tea. We have our buddy mentorship program for incoming students, networking events with the BC landscape like governing body, firm visits, wellness events, very similar to what ARCUS has. You can check out our social medias. We also host a website.
Oh, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, website with a lot of useful design resources. Yeah, even if you're not at SALA, there's some really useful resources in there for any graphics. But yeah, can't wait to have you all here. I guess, yeah, we'll hand it back to Daniel
Yeah, I
and
think
Tijana.
maybe now we'll do the Q&A. We've been holding back some questions that I thought might be nice for Daniel and Tijana. Can you guys see the Q&A there?
Yeah,
Yes,
we can.
Yeah.
So that first question there regarding our engagement with climate change, I could read the question and then maybe you guys could think about it and give a response.
I will read it. I will read it. Sorry.
Okay.
We both will read it and then maybe we can do a response. Yeah, I got it.
I'll start
Yeah.
answering it. That building that you saw, Third Space Commons, is not a theoretical building. It's an actual building our students designed with a partner and made a building on campus that is has a zero carbon footprint because of the way it is made, and won, I think, third place on the international competition of climate of buildings that address
in the US.
climate change, the solar decathlon. So this is our engagement with climate change is, of course, conceptual, and we discuss about ways to approach this problem. But we have a lot of hands-on expertise, which goes from our courses in environmental systems, where students do not only make calculations and models, but build the little structures that are supposed to keep at a particular temperature for like 48 hours. And if you don't pass the class, to building these large scale projects funded by grants where students just like employ and build real life expertise on how to make a carbon neutral building, for example. And we have top faculty here. We have, for example, Adam Reisnick, who is one of the leading experts in energy efficiency and sustainability in design. And then we have Joe Damon, for example, who is an expert in micellar biomaterials, and who who has his own lab researching biomaterials, but also supervises projects for students who decide, for example, for their graduation, to invent a new material made of algae or made of found matter in our environment. So we have like top talent, and we have really hands-on experience, which goes beyond like researching LED ratings into like making real world actual objects that that tackle climate change problems. So this is a vibrant culture here. There is not much theory. You have to make your own materials and build a carbon neutral home.
I would like to add on this building as well, Adam, apart from the design and the conceptual, they do also run the data. So there is a big sophistication also from the research side. He's also researching, running data in this building, monitoring it, and writing papers on it also from a research side. I think that's also important. So we have the applied part, conceptually designing it, but you're totally right. It's not just about the LEED ratings. It actually goes beyond that with developing our own standards and sophistication research where we actually run the data and monitor it. And Adam, for example, is doing that. I think that's a really great question, actually. I would just go to the next one. The MLA, it asks about if we are reviewed on I hear it's also going to be answered by Tara, but I can say we have a deadline, but Tara will clarify that, I think.
Yeah, I just thought it might be worthwhile to just address this on both fronts. So we don't do them on a rolling basis. We do wait until the application deadline closes, and then all of the applications go to admission committees and decisions are made. And we usually expect answers to come out, what would you say, Janice? Near the end of March, middle of March. Yeah.
Middle to end of March, yeah.
Middle to end of March is when you would hear. So I just thought it might be worthwhile. We were getting a couple of questions about that. Did you see the one there, Daniel, right above that? So this is somebody who's interested in urban design and wanting to
I'm just
design
reading it
public
right
spaces. Mhm.
Both of our programs can
Yes.
address that.
Yes.
Yes.
And yeah, both programs do that. Yeah. With my
In the architecture program, in the first semester, second year, there's a urban design
Yes.
studio or urban design option studio, where for the entire semester, students design what Megan is interested in, for
Yeah.
example.
And we also have, we can draw on also professors from the post-professional Master of Urban Design program. So we have really a big body of adjuncts as well as professors like ourselves who teach urban design and are very interested in it in any scale, from a landscape architecture perspective, an architecture perspective,
Yeah.
as you just mentioned. And we always have 1 or 2 studios which teach at that scale. So Megan, I hope we addressed this issue when I just read your email. So yes, we do all of that. And that's why SALA is very strong, because we also integrate things like transportation, transit systems, not just the architecture and the landscape architecture, but look at it holistically, how a city works. I teach a course, for example, to the undergrads, where I teach them how to visualize a city, how it functions at, above, and below ground. So we teach all that. So there's a lot of knowledge in urban design at the school. Traditionally, Patrick Condon, who is not much longer with us, he's been here for many years, since the early 90s, was very famous in this field and has really founded very strong influence in urban design and led the way in this and made the SALA a leader in the field, I would like to say as well. Yeah. Is there another?
So it sounds like what you guys are saying is that it would be really up to her. Both programs would probably be
Absolutely,
applicable.
both programs. And Megan, if you want, just shoot us an email, either Tijana or me, and we are happy to,
Yes.
or phone us, and we will sort that out and give you some more input if you want.
So I see that Janus is answering this question. I meant to have it go live because we have had some questions, and it seems like maybe you guys didn't touch fully on these topics. So maybe we could speak a minute.
Maybe
about
I'll
what
just
our
read
study
what I
abroad-
already wrote.
Okay,
Yeah.
why don't you read, James? Yes.
Sure. I mean, anyone feel free to jump in too, but I just said for study abroad, we normally have a couple per summer. Last year was Japan and somewhere in Europe. I can't remember.
With Eastern Europe, yeah.
Eastern Europe.
Eastern Europe.
And then this year, what we have on the plate that's still being organized is Scandinavia and Italy.
And
Or somewhere.
Sardinia,
Sardinia.
the island of
Sardinia.
Sardinia,
Yeah.
Italy, correct.
And then in terms of co-op, on the website, under whichever degree you're interested in looking at, if you click on the degree, you'll see there's handbooks in each degree, and there's a co-op handbook, so you can look at information on co-op. It's an optional part of the program, so it's not required, but you can take a look on the website at the handbook there. And then for work opportunities, there are a ton. We have a lot of TA opportunities because we have the undergrad program now, the BDes program. So there's a lot of TA opportunities, and then opportunities to work with professors as well with projects they're working on, labs they have, things like that. And then studio projects, I go to all the studio presentations at the beginning of the year, and I do find there's quite a lot of group or partnered projects. I wouldn't say group projects, but there's a lot of partnering up. There are individual projects as well, but maybe Tijana and Daniel could speak more about that.
We're trying to strike a good balance.
Mhm.
The general attitude is that most projects should be individual. So when you put something in your portfolio, it's clear that you designed it. But also for building community in the school and for students learning how to cooperate, which is what practice looks like, basically. There are opportunities within the studios and within which studios where you can work with a partner. Situations where you work with more than one person, as Janus points out, are very, very rare. So it's either working in couples or working individually in almost all of our studios. Have you seen groups of more than two in landscape?
Yeah, I do a couple of, I make sure that all my studios, and I'm in the chair role, we both in the chair role knew this year that I've asked a lot of because there has been a question from students as well, that we have a part of the studio being taught alone. So there is some individual component, and then often it's a team component. When I teach urban design studios, I also start alone and then do smaller teams and larger teams so that the students in 3 phases learn to learn with a team partner, but also in a larger group, assign different tasks, because in an architectural landscape architecture firm, you will always be working with different professionals and you have to learn to respond to that. But we, like Tijana said, make sure there's a fine balance. We will make sure that there is individual teaching depending on the class, and the studio group teaching very rarely, but team teaching does happen as well. So there's a fine balance, I would say.
Yes. Exception to this is actually the graduation project, JP2.
Yeah.
Which is a particular kind of collaborative culture where the third-year student is about to present their thesis, and it's encouraged that first and second-year student come and help as collaborators and learn from the third-year student, and at the same time ease this pressure on them to make like a huge project with 1 million drawings and the grand statement. And there's always like a little army of first and second years helping with this and helping with that. That's not really a group studio project, but it's kind of part of our teamwork in our school culture.
Is there another question, Janus and Tara, you would like us to say something?
Anything that says answer live, just go for it.
Oh, answer
Okay.
live. Yeah, we're just looking. Okay. We are just looking. Oh, this is
I
a
think
good
that,
question.
yeah, that first one there is a good one.
I have Trevor, but I'm going to ask the first one. I haven't looked at the first one. Hold on, that's the question.
I think this one of, are there any courses or learning opportunities where architecture and landscape architectures interact or learn together? I'd really like to hear a student speak to that. Robert, do you feel like you could speak to that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, 1 second. Let me just give it a closer read.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, really, so, I mean, I'm in the dual degree, the Markla Master of Architecture and Landscape Architecture. And so kind of by definition, I'm moving between the disciplines. But it's very true that even in either the MArch or the MLA programs, there's lots of opportunities in many of your courses to work with the other discipline. As Daniel mentioned earlier, the studios, often the vertical studios where you're choosing your from a selection of options, those allow architects and landscape architects to work together. And I've seen some really great projects out of those studios that, very collaborative in that sense. The design builds as well are similarly collaborative.
And the summer study abroad trips, a lot of the summer electives really are like very much collaborative.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and I would like to add to that there's kind of so while you're working together in your courses, you're also sort of going to the same events and part of the same community. We're really one school, so I think whichever program you're interested in, you'll see both sides of the coin there. So definitely good on that front.
So this next one is asking sort of about what do we feel our focus is. So this student had heard that our MArch program was more focused on technical skills and maybe less on the design piece, and that some of the other schools in Canada were more focused on the art and design piece. I don't know that I would agree with that. I thought maybe you guys could speak to you guys being Tijana and Daniel. Would you say
I start this time because Tijana, I'm sure, has a similar opinion. I keep it short and sweet. I disagree. We obviously teach. I'm actually a professor who teaches a lot of the technical courses because I'm a landscape architect and a practitioner for many years before I was appointed a prof. But I actually would say that our school is definitely a design school, and we are definitely also very strong in the arts. We have a great arts faculty here on campus, and also very good art museums in the city. I would say it's a very fine balance, and we have professors. And one other, to cover one other question, which are in our discipline of architecture or landscape architecture, but who also teach in engineering. We have two professors who are also engineers and who are also teaching in the engineering faculties. So there's a really good crossover also. And some of us, like myself, I teach in other faculties, often science, geography, and forestry as well. I have a colleague, she also teaches in medical science. So that is the case. And I would say definitely a very fine balance between art, architecture, design, and technical skills as well. We have people who teach that. We just hired an architect who also is teaching particularly those parts as well. But you can address that even better than me, I think.
Well, we are definitely design school, but we understand that in order to be a good designer, you have to have great artistic skills, great technical skills, and to be aware of the historical and social problems that you're addressing. So it's like a trio of skills that you have to be a designer. Making appealing visual presentations is not what a design is only about. Although your jaws will drop if you saw GP2 projects and what they look like visually. And especially in these final years, I think students become braver and braver to propose like really, really conceptual design projects, which depart from this technical base where
Totally. We've had in landscape, just to give you I had one student 2 years ago, she did a book for a children book. She did a completely different presentation, but she presented it in such a good way. It was fascinating. So we are very open and flexible to allow people to spread out from their traditional pedestal of what architecture and landscape architecture is, because that's what academia is for, to give the students that freedom. Our job is to instill passion on them and to give them advice how to present it maybe, but it's absolutely necessary. And particularly, I mean, please remember they are master course students, highly qualified. And I'm just reading a lot of questions also about grades, etc. It is necessary. We are allowed some students with extremely creative portfolios under the regulations of admissions grades into the program. But in general, our program is extremely competitive, and the grades are an important part to enter this program as well, apart from the portfolio. And the reason for that is because there is this fine balance between understanding science, engineering, as well as the arts. I think that is a really important part. What do you think?
Remember Angela's project for GP2, where the author, the student, embroidered her entire set of drawings on the lining of a coat. If that's not a design school and an art school, I can't imagine what is really.
But before they are allowed to do that, they have to learn
environmental systems.
Environmental systems and the foundation of the fields to be able to do that and express the. So we give them the tools and the language, which is drawing, and the scientific backing and the technical backing to actually express themselves. But then in their final years, they are absolutely allowed to do what they want to do, because we are a open-minded
Very open.
professor body. I mean, teaching body, at least. I would say. I would have to hear the students on that.
Yeah,
before we
students,
go.
yes.
Please, Robert.
Well, I actually, we have a few others we wanted to get to. I think
okay,
you guys did a good job. I'm going to go to the students now with a couple of other ones that we've seen repeatedly here in the questions.
Please.
So I wanted to ask the students what they felt about the idea of having a part-time job while completing the program. How hard is it?
I think I can jump in and answer this. A lot of us have started to take on more responsibilities in this second year. Me and Alistair were in the second year MLA program. And I think it's really quite challenging to find the time to do anything other than your studio. Even it's amazing to be involved with the clubs that we have here, but it is quite a time suck, and your number one priority is always going to be your school at any given point in time. But there are a lot of TA opportunities that do work around your schedule, and some of the other students can speak more about those experiences.
Yeah, the work opportunities within SALA are like, there's quite a few. There's like workshop supervisors and yeah, lots of TA opportunities. And those roles are generally kind of more flexible and easier to fit around your schedule. I could not imagine trying to work like 15 or 20 hours a week at like a regular job while also keeping up with school. The program is, I'd say, too demanding for that.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. It is known for students to have part-time jobs, at that number of hours that Alistair mentioned, 15 to 20. But it is extremely difficult. And what I've done and what I would recommend others do is take advantage of those TA opportunities and the other ones that Alistair mentioned. They're quite well paid. They are flexible with your schedule, and also they kind of keep you in conversation with other students and with design culture at the school. So there's lots of good opportunities there.
And
I think people also work in the summer. Like that's, I think, what the program is structured around is you do your electives in the first summer, and then if you have the chance to, you try to get an internship for the second summer, and that's where a lot of students have found their funding throughout the year. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you guys. That's really great. One other thing I was hoping you might speak to briefly. So we have a question about what kind of design media skills you learn, like what sort of programs are taught in the program. Maybe Robert might want to speak to that.
Yeah, sure, I can speak to that. So I think one thing for sure is that there's not strict, although in design media you're kind of taught some basic programs that I'll talk through that are foundational to how we produce projects at this school. You're not limited to those programs, and students interested find innovative ways to push their projects forward in different software and different media. But we learn the basics of programs like AutoCAD, Rhino 3D for modeling, as well as, and please Hannah and Alistair jump in if I miss some, because it's hard to think off the top of my head, but as well ArcGIS Pro for kind of spatial mapping and regional scale demographic analyses and kind of things of that nature, big data, as well. Then on the kind of graphic and formatting side, the Adobe suite, so Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, InDesign, these kinds of things. And I know that students now are starting to learn, and it's starting to be integrated into the curriculum, is kind of these emerging AI tools. As well, one thing I'd mention, we work quite a lot in design media, and then in our projects, there's a lot of options to work with visual programming languages that integrate with 3D modeling tools like Grasshopper and Rhino, or Dynamo and Revit. So Revit's one I haven't mentioned yet, but Revit would be another kind of BIM modeling software that you'd learn in this program. So I think students are pretty well equipped with software competency and fluency when they enter the field.
Perfect. Thanks. I just want to take a second to mention, for those of you that might not have seen, we have had a lot of questions about the portfolio, and I know that we didn't speak much about that in this session. Some of you may have seen that we put the link on we do have like a 1-hour session on our YouTube channel that was made a couple of years ago. That's very useful. I would definitely recommend you have a look at it. I have put the link in the chat. And I see that Emma has also put a link in the chat to where you can see samples of our students' work. So I know we've talked a lot about it, but if you actually want to see it, what it looks like, we do have that up on our website. I am going to do maybe a couple more questions. I have one to go to Tijana and Daniel. I was wondering if you could describe how the program connects with other disciplines at the university.
Yeah, I saw that question before. That really depends how much you want to connect. I mean, this is a full university, one of the biggest in Canada, and I think every faculty colleague in any other program is happy to receive input or give input. I have personally taught in many different faculties and vice versa. A lot of those students, when I teach there, come then later on to our programs to either study or do a direct study or research. So there's a big collaboration, but that has to be always initiated by the student and the professors. So I did a lot with engineering, with geography, with forestry, but mostly through students coming to visit, vice versa, also from those departments who then want to work a bit in landscape and vice versa. But the opportunities can arise, and you can get credits as long as the two professors communicate, for example, for direct studies, up to 3 to 6 credits I have in the past had with students exchanging. So that is absolutely possible, and it's encouraged. We encourage it. We support it. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah. And in architecture, there are 3 basic ways in which you can connect with the rest of the university. First is driven by the students. You can take electives. In the limited number of electives you have, you can take it in the other departments. Then, because we collaborate often or are familiar with other colleagues in other departments, they sometimes come and give lectures in our classes, so you're exposed to the broader community. And third, when you're doing your graduation project, you're invited to create a committee of people to guide you in your work. And that's very, very often consists of 1 or maximum 2 SALA people. And the rest of the people are practitioners or professors from other departments at the university. We have long-standing contacts with the literature department, the history department, and the sociology department. At least they were on my students' committees, as I can remember.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to point out, in recent years, there's a lot of connection also with the First Nations community on campus. We have the MOA, one of the most famous anthropology museums in Canada. And there's an amazing faculty body, which we also in landscape architecture are tapping into on the historical side, but also on archaeological side. Deep history thinking, a lot of different areas of expertise there, which we use. And the students mentioned that the Japanese garden and the Asian center are also really important parts where we don't only visit, we teach. I teach a lot of my drawing classes and multisensorial experiential classes in the Japanese garden. And I lived many years in Japan, and I can say, and I know that our Nitobe garden is one of the best in North America, which is part of the camp, it's on campus. So fascinating. We have a lot of this, so it's not just faculty interdisciplinary, but also localities. So we have a lot of, there's a lot of opportunities. You had another question.
There is, I think, let's address the one. So we have somebody who's asking about how our Master of Architecture program integrates sustainability principles with innovative uses of wood in architecture. So they're interested in the use of wood in architecture. I think we're maybe doing some interesting things. So maybe you could speak about that a little bit. Are there opportunities for students to explore these themes through research or collaborations?
Okay, so there are a couple of our faculty, full-time faculty, most prominently Annalisa Mayboom, who collaborates with designers and engineers at UBC and locally to work in robotically fabricated wood, and makes leads these design build projects which focus on the innovative use of wood. We showed the project by Joe Damon where he recycled cedar from construction sites into this beautiful, beautiful structure that is built on our campus. But also, like, the thing that first comes to mind is that in the third year Option Studios this year, we have an entire studio led by John Hemsworth. Probably you know his work as featured on, it was featured on the AD cover, yes. Who is the leading BC expert in sustainable use of wood, who is our adjunct and is leading a studio in which you would learn only about that for the entire semester.
We also had Michael Green, who is very famous in wood construction, as his office, and UBC has one of the highest high-rises, or one of the first high-rises. And Lisa also collaborates a lot with Europe, particularly Germany, Stuttgart, on wood construction and robotics, which is very big in Europe. And I think that high-rise building, which is on campus, I have a lot of my German colleagues coming here to investigate about how, for example, the fire regulations work in this building. So we even have one of the most prominent wood structures on campus. So wood is definitely a big subject matter and taught at the highest level around the world. And on that note, I would like to say we've just hired a AI professor who also is amazing with visualization. This person is an architect and landscape architect, and also has a big interest in all these different visualizations of wood structures, etc. So there's a lot going on.
Yes,
I would say. Can I give one comment on portfolios? Is that allowed?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to hear it.
I would like to say, because I see a lot of questions, and I've had over the years, been here a while, a lot of questions to my office and emails about portfolios. There is no method. Everybody is different. But what I've learned being on admissions for many years is the variety makes it. It's the more you show the variety, it's not about perfect drawings, it's the variety of ideas, photography, text, a drawing, a sketch, any different scales. I think fashion, handmade things, carpentry, it could be anything. I think the more variety it is presented, the better it is, I think. And I think also the text, the little statement is really crucial. And very important are the references from your undergrad professors. People ask, of course, at least 2 academic references. By that is meant a full-time professor at any rank is needed, that is required. Some people can't have 3, we get that. If you have 3, even better, but at least 2. And the third person can be, for example, a manager of a big firm or something like that. But I think it is crucial.
Or ceramics interest.
Or, but I think often we get asked about these, particularly who the referees should be. The higher rank they are from the undergrad program you are at, the better it is, I would say.
I would also say that just asking for a reference letter from your dean just because they're a dean is maybe
not
less good than asking for a reference from somebody who knows you very well.
Exactly.
And is willing to write in detail about you. There's a difference between a 1-paragraph recommendation from the dean, which demonstrates that the referee totally does not know you, but just signed a boilerplate rec, and somebody who might be your adjunct instructor or like a first year I don't meet design drawing instructor, but who knows your work intimately and
Yes.
is able to write about you on a full page or full 2 pages. And we get recommendations which are like which reflect like a deep knowledge of the student and a deep engagement with the student. And it provides us with a lot of information. That's a good reference. It's not like, let me go to the dean of the school and get 3 sentences. It's like, just choose somebody who knows you. And when we read a reference from somebody who knows you and who was willing to spend the time, we really, really value that.
Also, an adjunct professor is totally equal as long as they write it's an adjunct professor or lecturer or senior lecturer. They need to be very explicit what they write underneath so that we can really recognize that they are the instructors of the student. I totally agree. Not the dean who just looks at the transcript. That's not helpful. It's better than to choose an adjunct professor. What I meant by rank, the higher they are, the better. But if the adjunct professor has taught the student in first year, that's as good as, but not a dean who barely has met the student apart from the computer. That's not helpful. So, and we know that often students struggle to find 3, but I would say 2 is a minimum they should have.
Okay, thank you both. We have this one last question in there. I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm not familiar with. Yeah, I'm not familiar with this. Maybe Tijana is. Are you familiar with this RAIC syllabus diploma as a path to accreditation?
As far as I understand, and please, Sound Custodio should correct me. As far as I understand this program, and I understand that it's relatively new, so my familiarity is the same as you guys, is that years of practice, a certain amount of years in practice, like 15, can be recognized towards accreditation in lieu of an accredited master's or bachelor's program and an internship on top of that. Am I right to identify this program as that one?
I don't think that guests are able to speak.
Yeah, okay. So
we've shut them down.
Okay, as if this is what I'm talking about, and I hope I think that both paths are equally good. Both paths are equally relevant. I think the master's path takes a shorter period of time, but if you're already in practice and if you feel that you are going to be advancing through your practice, and if this is, I can't like say, oh my God, you have to come to SALA and you have to do a master's degree, because there's obviously an alternative path to becoming an architect. The path with an accredited architectural school is shorter, and you get a broader view of the profession that might be a little bit more valuable on top of all the practice that you're gonna have.
And friends, a community, a global community.
Oh my God! Okay.
The global community. I can tell you, same in landscape. 10 years, you can have an undergrad, work for a landscape architect under his supervision, then do the Larrys. So same process. But the people who have done this, I've examined a lot of these people are very lonely in their little offices. The good thing of architecture or landscape architecture program is exactly what you said, but it is also you make friends for a lifetime and connections.
Okay, yes. So if we are going to talk about professional advantages of coming to an MArch program, there are 2. UBC degree is recognized everywhere in the world. And if you want to get a job in China, in Netherlands, in France, it opens doors.
In Germany too.
In Germany too. It just opens doors internationally for employment. The second is you're building a network as you in architecture school, a network of people who are initially your lifelong friends, but who you're going to call upon throughout your career. You have like maybe 60 people, 10 to 60 people that you can connect with throughout your career. And who were for 3 years very close to you and will be inclined to collaborate you over the course of next 30 or 40 years of your career. Talking about professional advantages, not intellectual advantages of going to an MArch program. Just very practically, this is what you get professionally.
Is this helpful?
Is this helpful? We don't know.
We don't know.
I think that sounded helpful. It helped me. It helped me to understand more. So we are a little bit over time now. I just want to, there were brief introductions in the beginning, but I just want to say for everybody that's there. So myself, I'm currently looking after the Master of Landscape Architecture and the dual degree program. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me. And then Janice is looking after the MArch program. You can find our emails on the SALA website, and we're here to answer questions about anything you might want to know about. And I would encourage you to reach out. I don't know. Did you guys have any closing remarks you wanted to make?
Yeah, the only thing is if anyone wants to visit us, I'm happy to. I've done this in the past. I'm delighted to show people around. It's I just enjoy doing it, and I've done it. And if there's very specific questions, but only if they're very specific, always CC Janice and Tara. But if there's specific questions where my input is needed, I'm happy to help to answer those. But I'm always happy and willing to show people around campus. And I highly recommend also to come to any reviews. Like next week, in 2 weeks, we have reviews. You can visit those, visit the critiques, or you can come to the graduate presentations or the studio presentations in April. And we all know the times and can send them to any students who's interested. I think it's important, and we've had this in the past, and I know students then came to join our program.
Yeah, we post them on the SALA website.
Oh,
So
great.
if somebody is local and wants to come out and see some of the reviews, just keep an eye on the SALA website. You might also want to subscribe to our e-blast, which at the bottom of our website, you can see a link to subscribe to our e-blast. We send it out every Thursday, and it has information about events that we're doing, lectures that we're putting on, things like that. It's a way to be connected with the school before you become a student. So I think given the time that we're at, I think we're okay. All the questions seem to have been answered. So
There's just one more, and it's about varsity athletes. Are there any varsity athletes in SALA?
I have a couple in the bachelor program.
Yeah, okay.
But not in the MArch program. I don't think I don't think it's possible. Like people have a hard time finding time to go to the gym twice a week. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I haven't heard of any current students that are currently in varsity sports, but we have many that are former varsity athletes. I think generally the timeline.
I'm a little bit shy to say no right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I would encourage
You're
the
right.
student who's asked the question to reach out to Janice to have that conversation. There are ways to kind of work around schedules and potentially make it work. I've definitely had students that have high workload that have been able to make it work. So I don't want to say no right away.
For
I
sure.
would encourage you to reach out.
Thank you, Tara.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming to the session today. We hope that you learned something, and hopefully we'll see you all in September.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bye.